Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the ever-changing world of technology? Tech It Out can help make some sense of it all. Breaking down geek speak into street speak, technology columnist, author, and TV personality Mark Saltzman covers consumer technology each week for every listener. Mark tackles the latest news, reviews, and how-tos to help you understand what's hot, what's not, and why.
Hey everyone, welcome to Tech It Out, episode 183. Hope you're having a great mid-February weekend so far, and happy Valentine's Day to those who celebrate the Hallmark holiday. It's only special to me, I think, because I met my wife at a house party on Valentine's Day 24 years ago. Wow. Well, we have a packed Tech It Out for you this hour. Speaking of Valentine's Day, we're going to start off talking about the latest devices that could be hacked. Adult toys, if you know what I mean. I promise we'll keep the language clean, but we are going to chat with the cybersecurity experts at ESET about hackable toys. We'll also chat about romance scams that are duping Americans into sending people money over the internet who fall for false love. Even more so around Valentine's Day weekend, in fact. TP-Link will join us this hour to chat Wi-Fi 6, what it is, what you need to get going, and all the advantages this new generation of Wi-Fi brings into your home. And finally, we're going to talk with Dr. Jeffrey Preston, a disability studies professor. We're going to talk about technology, the accessibility settings you can take advantage of, and the role social media plays in our perception of the disabled community. Dr. Preston himself is in a wheelchair. All of this and more on a brand new Tech It Out, powered by ASUS, for those in search of incredible. I'll tell you more about ASUS shortly, but let's kick off the show with our first interview. Valentine's Day is this weekend, and while you might think it's an odd time to discuss cybersecurity, you might think otherwise after you hear from our next guest. Tony Anscombe is a cybersecurity expert and global spokesperson for ESET, a leading cybersecurity company. Between romance scams and even hackable toys for adults, this is certainly going to be a stimulating discussion. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Good to chat with you again, Tony. How are you?
I'm great, Mark. Good to be here.
Okay, great. Now, before we talk about these new threats, tell us a bit about ESET.
Well, so ESET's, as you mentioned, a cybersecurity company. We've been in business 30 years, and we develop security software and services for businesses and consumers, all the way from the endpoint, i.e. your laptop, your mobile phone, all the way through to big enterprises with something called endpoint detection and response.
Okay, the idea is that you keep the bad guys out using software, and there's also a whole educational component to ESET as well. I know that you also write blogs for welivesecurity.com. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, cybersecurity is as much about our behavior as the technology that we use to help protect us.
Yeah. And what would you say separates ESET from other cybersecurity vendors out there?
We have an ingrained research element within our company, and I'd say that is pretty much the biggest thing in there. But all our products are also designed by engineers from that kind of research background. So you'll find they're low impact, they max out the detection. And one thing we pride ourselves on is having really low false positives.
Okay, so that's important because you don't want important emails, for example, to be stuck or blocked by ESET because you need to read those. And sometimes cybersecurity software can get overzealous and block things that you do need to read. Is that fair?
Yes, and you don't want false detections of something popping up and saying you can't get to this website when it's a legitimate website. So actually the false positives can sometimes be more disruptive than actually detecting something.
Great point. Okay, with Valentine's Day this weekend, I wanted to turn our attention to cybersecurity threats tied to certain toys that you may be using or gifting to your partner. This is the first time in my show's history that I'll be asking about this topic, and I promise parents out there the language will be kept clean. But Tony, when it comes to protection, there's more to the story than wearing protection. Talk to us about these toys that could be susceptible to a cyber attack.
Well, these toys have several components. So you have the toy itself. It may be connected to a cloud service, and at the other end of the cloud service, you may have an app. You may have the toy in hand, so to speak, but actually somebody else may be controlling it. Or the toy may be getting its commands over Bluetooth, so a device closely connected to it. With all these different components in there, and as you and I have spoken before, Mark, about IoT devices, there's an opportunity in here for somebody to be involved in that communication or break that communication and create a cyber attack. And when you think about the personal nature of these toys that we're talking about, that could be a little awkward.
I would say so. And because of the discretion with these types of toys, I mean, are you really finding this is a thing? Are people coming forward and admitting that there was some sort of cyber attack?
Well, so two of our researchers actually looked in depth at a couple of these devices, and we found vulnerabilities with the two that we did examine. One was where you have a man-in-the-middle attack, and what that means is somebody is sitting between the controlling software of the device and the device itself, and they then take control of all the commands being sent to the device. So if you think about that, that's kind of like somebody abusing you digitally, when you think about what these toys are actually doing. But also, then there's all the data that's going back into the cloud. So pictures, chats, videos, all these sorts of things that these toys also have attached to them of lacking encryption. So could be causing a big privacy issue there as well.
Yeah, great point. And this was discovered by ESET South America folks, is that correct?
It was. We have two female researchers that actually undertook this project, and I'd like to see what they put on their expenses, actually.
So would I. We're chatting with Tony Anscombe. He's a global spokesperson for ESET, a leading cybersecurity company. And by the way, that's the only software I use to protect all of my devices. I've been a fan of ESET for about, I want to say 8 or 9 years now. And on that note, Tony, you talked about sort of the ancillary sort of risks here. So if you sign up, like you register these devices and all that, if it's not encrypted, that means it is susceptible to a breach, perhaps, and that could be extra embarrassing if this information got out onto the web.
Absolutely. And what may happen there is you may be extorted because of the images or because of the chat, or also your preferences,
right.
Your partner preferences would be in the public domain as well. So this is particularly personal information that you're sharing with a company and through these devices. So you make sure that the company is treating your data with the utmost caution and that you're not oversharing in there. In fact, one of the things I'd suggest is anybody that has one of these, you set up a different email account, never take pictures of faces or anything like that, to limit your risk so that you can shut things down if you need to.
Yeah, great point. I'm going to ask you about some other tips as well for these devices as well as some others. But you brought up a good point about ransomware. Somebody could be trying to extort money from you. Cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, unless you pay up, they're going to spread this information that could be very embarrassing. It's a great point. It could lead to ransomware. So what other tips do you have to securing these devices? So one is to set up, have an alternate email address, maybe even with a phony name when you register.
That is a great tip. And one of the other things is before you buy any device, make sure you've done your homework. Actually research the device here. Go into the search engine, go into Google, search the device name and look for the word vulnerabilities next to it. One of the things the internet is great at is telling us whether devices are vulnerable before we buy them. So make sure you do actually carry out that research yourself. And if the device is updatable, even if there are vulnerabilities but the company's fixed them, make sure that actually the software is available to patch the device going forward.
That's a good one. Any other tips to securing your devices across the board?
Well, one other tip is don't use these in public places. That's where you're most at risk of a man-in-the-middle attack. And I say that because you could be on public Wi-Fi or you could be in a bar or a restaurant. And maybe lockdown is stopping us doing that at the moment. But in the future, it won't be. So make sure you're using them in the comfort and security of a secure place.
I can't picture people using these in public places. Mind you, in a hotel, you may be using the hotel's free Wi-Fi, and that's perhaps a vulnerability right there.
I think you need to do your own research here, Mark.
Really? Oh boy.
What some of these devices are and how they're used.
Okay, I guess I'm a bit ignorant here. I'll have to Google that when we're done. Before we wrap up, Tony, I did hint also off the top about romance scams that seem to be popular, unfortunately, around this time of year. Talk to us a bit about that and how we can protect ourselves from them.
So romance scams are where somebody creates a fake persona, an identity in social media networks, in dating apps or dating sites, and tries to fraudulently take money off of their victim. And they will do that by professing love, having a relationship, etc. And unfortunately, this is a growing issue. And in the US, I mean, the FTC actually do produce some numbers that in 2019, just to give you an indication, the amount of fraud that was reported on this particular issue was $201 million. So it's a big growing issue.
That's terrible.
And those are the people that report it, because I think it's one of those crimes that a lot of people will think, I've been really stupid, I'm not going to admit to it. So I think this number is actually on the low side. But be cautious. If you're looking for romance, a relationship online, make sure that actually you validate who the person is, and never send money to somebody you've never met. And again, where you can, keep them at distance. Make sure you're validating them in the right way. They will have a unique story. They'll be working on an oil rig. They'll be in the military. There'll be a doctor in some remote land. There'll be some story of why they can't meet you. And then there'll be some story around that of why they need money. So I need money for travel, or I need money. You can imagine during the pandemic of saying I need money for a vaccine or a test, or there's all sorts of ways they're going to try and trick you. But the rule is, if you've never met them, don't send them money.
Yeah, all great advice, Tony, and worth going over again and again, because we do hear about these unfortunate scams. Tony, great to chat with you. Tony Anscombe, always a great guest on this program. He is a global spokesperson for ESET, and he's so humble he didn't even recommend his own company's cybersecurity software as a means to prevent an attack. But of course, you want to download ESET, which is a free trial, by the way, to all your devices. Great chatting with you, Tony. All the best. Stay healthy.
And you, Mark. Great to be here.
We'll be back shortly with more Tech It Out when we learn all about Wi-Fi 6 and why it's time to upgrade your router. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Listen to Tech It Out whenever you want. Find the Tech It Out podcast at iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Tech It Out, powered by ASUS. For those in search of incredible, ASUS creates technology for today and tomorrow's smart life. And that includes its line of award-winning laptops and desktops, monitors, smartphones, smartwatches, tablets, and more. For those in search of incredible, visit asus.com/US/radio for more info. That's asus.com/US/radio. With so many of us now working or schooling from home, no doubt this is putting extra pressure on your wireless network. Lots of devices trying to access high-speed internet at the same time, which could impact performance, of course. And so you may have heard the term Wi-Fi 6, as it's the new generation of wireless routers. What is Wi-Fi 6 exactly, and what will it improve? What do you need to get going? How much are they? To answer these questions and others, we're joined by Amir Captain. He's Senior Manager of Sales and Customer Experience at TP-Link Technologies, a leading networking company. Welcome to the show, Amir.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be here.
Before we talk about Wi-Fi 6, please tell us a bit about the company TP-Link.
Sure. So TP-Link was founded in 1996, so 25 years in business. We operate in 170 countries across the world, have 30,000 plus employees. Now, 30,000 sounds like a large amount, but this is because TP-Link owns its product design, engineering, and manufacturing all in-house.
Okay, and networking equipment is your primary focus. I know you've got some smart home devices too that also are tied to networking, like Wi-Fi. But routers, I think, is what you're best known for. With that in mind, Amir, at a high level, what's Wi-Fi 6 all about?
So, Mark, Wi-Fi 6, also known as AX to some people, is a new standard in wireless networking, primarily meant to handle multiple devices that require high data transfer. It is more efficient, has higher capacity, faster transfer speeds, and is more stable and reliable compared to the current AC, or, as most people may know, Wi-Fi 5 standard.
Right. Okay. So the last generation of Wi-Fi, which we've been using for several years, I've always called it 802.11 AC, but as you called it, as you said, it's also known as Wi-Fi 5. So that is now being replaced by Wi-Fi 6, otherwise known as 802.11ax. It's a little bit easier to just say Wi-Fi 6,
Absolutely.
which has several advantages, as you're pointing out. The big one is capacity. Like, is that right? So the ability to have more devices on the network at the same time, which will then in turn give you better performance. Like the analogy I like to use, and tell me if this works with you, is that if you think about your connection to the internet being a multi-lane highway, Wi-Fi 6 adds more lanes. So that means less congestion, so you can get to where you're going faster.
That is absolutely right, Mark. Okay. And I think exactly the beginning of the show when you mentioned schooling from home, working from home, that requires a lot of data transfer, whether it is your spouse watching TV or your kids watching TV, some playing video games, some are on the school website, virtual learning, and you are on conference calls or video calls. That bandwidth requires a lot bigger pipe or as you mentioned, a wider highway for traffic to flow, in this case, data.
Okay, great, perfect. So what Wi-Fi 6 routers does TP-Link have?
From a TP-Link model number perspective, anything that has a letter X in it represents a Wi-Fi 6 router. Take, for example, our Archer lineup. Models such as the Archer AX50 or Archer AX6000 are all Wi-Fi 6 compatible. But we also have range extenders such as the RE605X that will also be Wi-Fi 6 compatible along with PCI cards. So I know you asked for routers, but it's for TP-Link, it's not just specific to routers, a lot of accessories to help other devices that are not on Wi-Fi 6 compatible. We have solutions for that as well.
All right. So the extenders, as the name suggests, will extend your range throughout the home, maybe larger homes. Well, Wi-Fi 6 would allow more simultaneous devices on the network and can enhance some speed when it comes to range, like getting Wi-Fi in more places around the home. This is where an extender may come in. And then you said PCI card. So that's like something that you might snap into a desktop PC. Is that right?
That is correct. And a lot of gamers who have built their PCs over a period of time are very capable of high-speed computing. But the network transfer speed sometimes becomes a hindrance. And if their systems were built in the past, they're likely on Wi-Fi 5 connectivity, and our solution just upgrades their PC to a Wi-Fi 6 if you have a Wi-Fi 6 router as well.
Right. Thanks for the clarification. That was going to be my next question, is what you need to get going. Along with a Wi-Fi 6 enabled router, it helps if you have a Wi-Fi 6 enabled device to join the router. So a laptop that has a Wi-Fi 6 chip in it, for example, or smartphones that have that more advanced Wi-Fi. So that helps, but it is backward compatible if you do have an older laptop. It's just you're not going to be able to take advantage of that extra speed and other benefits.
That is absolutely right. I see Wi-Fi 6 as future-proofing yourself. So if you are a customer in the market looking to upgrade your network infrastructure, you should be considering a Wi-Fi 6 router, because if your devices that you use currently, your phones, your TV, if they are all on Wi-Fi 5, the Wi-Fi 6 router is still backwards compatible. So everything you currently have in your house will absolutely work seamlessly. But if you are at some point starting to upgrade your devices and you have a Wi-Fi 6 capable device, that just is able to take the benefit and advantage of the faster speeds that Wi-Fi 6 is able to deliver.
When we return on Tech It Out, we'll wrap things up with Amir Captain from TP-Link. We'll learn a little bit more about Wi-Fi 6 and how much it costs to get involved, not as much as you may think. Then we're going to chat with Dr. Jeffrey Preston. He is a disabilities professor at King's College, part of University of Western Ontario. We'll talk about technology and the disability community. Stick with us, more Tech It Out coming right up.
Want to follow Mark? Google him. Mark with a C and Saltzman with a Z. Breaking down geek speak into street speak. This is Tech It Out. Tech It Out with technology columnist, author, and TV personality Mark Saltzman.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Tech It Out. We're chatting with Amir Captain, Senior Manager of Sales and Customer Experience at TP-Link. So we've talked about speed. We've talked a bit about range. What about security and parental controls? Do your Wi-Fi 6 routers offer any of those?
So basic security, Mark, is a standard feature in networking when we talk general. But most TP-Link devices come with enhanced security and parental controls absolutely free. We call it home care, which includes antivirus installed on the router. Other brands may charge some fee for it, but with TP-Link, it's absolutely free. When we talk about range, the Wi-Fi 6 uses some radio frequency bands as Wi-Fi 5. So there is some limitation from that perspective, but based on all the technologies built in, like we talked about earlier, efficiency, signal stability, etc., Wi-Fi 6 is meant to deliver a better range than Wi-Fi 5.
Okay, great. And then just before we wrap up, Amir, how much do the Wi-Fi 6 routers cost from TP-Link? And just to be clear to our listeners, if you rent a router from your ISP, from your internet service provider, you can still use an external router like those from TP-Link because the box you get from your ISP is also a modem. So you can just simply disable the router portion and then use the newer router. That's possible, correct?
It is absolutely possible, Mark, but I'm going to talk about one more thing, which is something I've implemented in my own home. So most traditional homes have routers or internet connection come in the basement. And that is a challenge because the main floor or the top floor, often you get foggy signal. Right. So what I've done in my house is kept the Wi-Fi from my service provider on that works on a completely different network ID, and it is only used in the basement. And then my main router is on the main floor. So main floor and up, I use a different ID, if you will, for my Wi-Fi. And that gives a completely different strong signal for main places where the internet is used in the house.
And how do you connect your, presumably, TP-Link router on your main floor to your internet service provider's modem/router in the basement?
Oh, it's very simple. So the internet service provider, doesn't matter what company internet you have, the router or modem router has a network connection, call it connecting to another device, like a hardwired network cable. I was lucky that my basement was unfinished, so I just ran a network cable 50 foot from my internet service provider router to the main floor and connected my router on the main floor.
Okay, so you used an Ethernet cable, which you can even buy from like your local dollar store. But is there a way to do that wirelessly as well, or would you recommend to make a wired connection between the two if you can?
If and where possible, it should be connected hardwired. That is the preferred option, yes.
Okay. How much do the Wi-Fi 6 routers cost approximately? And where can we learn more about TP-Link's devices?
So Wi-Fi 6 devices start from $80 and up, depending on the speeds and feeds and features. But the entry point is $80. And the best place to find any and all details on TP-Link Wi-Fi 6 devices would be tplink.com/Wi-Fi 6.
Okay, great. Amir, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. It's good to chat with you. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
As promised, in a moment from now, we're going to chat with Dr. Jeffrey Preston about the disability community and how they're leveraging technology and also the perception of that community on social media. He teaches a course called Memes and Dreams. Love it. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But first, we were just chatting with TP-Link about using computers with Wi-Fi 6 and other devices as well. Just a quick note, a little reminder to properly back up your files on a regular basis. Even techies like yours truly has recently found himself in a situation where my computer wouldn't start. I got locked out. It's called this BitLocker loop, something to do with the computer settings, and all my files were locked. I wasn't able to turn on my computer, but thankfully I back up my important files every night onto an external hard drive, and I also upload files to the cloud. If you want an inexpensive offline solution, consider Western Digital's line of external drives, both hard drives or solid state drives, which have a few benefits over a hard disk drive. Budget permitting, make sure you get a few terabytes. Each terabyte is about 1,000 gigabytes. So that should be more than enough for most people. Even digital pack rats with tons of photos and videos and music and games, you can fit a lot on these external drives, put it in a safe and dry place, and that way you're protecting it just in case something happens. So Western Digital drives are highly recommended. WD.com for more. All right, let's continue on with the show. A post-secondary course called Memes and Dreams, taught at King's University College at Western University, examines whether memes, those trendy online images, are just trivial social media noise, or do they provide deeper insight into our society? And how are those memes tied, if at all, to the disabled community? Is there an interesting link here? Well, joining us to discuss is Dr. Jeffrey Preston, professor of disability studies. He's an inspirational speaker as well, podcaster, and advocate for people with disabilities. Welcome to to the show, Professor Preston, Dr. Preston, whatever you prefer. Good to have you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right. Now, before we talk about accessibility tech and the class that you teach entitled Memes and Dreams, I love the name, by the way, please tell us a bit about yourself and how long have you been a professor?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm an assistant professor of disability studies, which means so my research area is really interested in the social construction, or the cultural construction of disability. And that means that I get to teach classes like Memes and Dreams. I teach a class on disability and pop culture, which is a second year course. And I also teach an introduction to disability studies. I've been a professor now for how many years? I've been at King's now for 4 years. Before that, I spent 2 years teaching at Fanshawe College in the digital marketing program. And before that, I was teaching as part of my PhD program at Western with my PhD in media studies.
All right, so you have a very close tie to London, Ontario, it seems.
Yes.
With Fanshawe and Western and King's.
Yeah, I moved here in 2002 for school and just never left.
Where are you from originally?
I grew up on Port Elgin, the second best sunsets in the world, right on the coast of Lake Huron.
Awesome. All right. And speaking of where you're from, you were also, just to tell our listeners, you were born with a rare neuromuscular myopathy, correct? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was 3 months old, my parents, they realized that something wasn't quite right away. I wasn't really moving around like my older sister when she was a baby. And it was during a visit to the pediatrician that it was determined something might be wrong here. We need to do some tests. And after a couple months of testing, I was diagnosed with a rare form of muscular dystrophy, which means essentially that my muscles don't grow like anybody else. So I'm quite weak. I've used a wheelchair my entire life, been in an electric wheelchair since about grade 4. I just need a lot of support in order to live independently.
Okay, got it. Thank you for sharing that with us. But let's please put a pin in that. When we return after this short break, Dr. Preston, I'm going to chat with you about some of the accessibility tools that are available today. We'll also talk about your course called Memes and Dreams and how it's tied to social media and the disabled community. So hang tight. We'll be right back with more Tech It Out.
Breaking down geek speak into street speak. Tech It Out, hosted by Mark Saltzman.
Welcome back to Tech It Out. We're chatting with Dr. Jeffrey Preston. He is a disability studies professor. So at a high level, talk to us about the accessibility tools that exist today. We use devices like smartphones, tablets, laptops and desktops, even smart TVs, smart speakers. What are some examples for those with perhaps some challenges, be it mobility or dexterity issues or vision impairment? They may be blind or hard of hearing. Tell us what is available in 2021.
What's really interesting to me as a researcher is that, I was a kid who grew up kind of on the internet. The internet didn't exist when I was a child, obviously, but when I was getting into about grade 7, grade 8, the internet showed up in my neighborhood in Port Elgin, and I was a really early adopter. And what I find really fascinating about the internet is the way that we talk about it as this revolution, that it was going to change everything. It was a brave new world that was going to bring us together in ways that we never imagined. And for a lot of people within the disabled population, they saw the internet as this new start. We regularly hear about how hard it is to make the quote unquote real world, the meat space, accessible because all these buildings have already existed. We've already built the world that we're living in. But the internet was going to be this new place, a new place for us to build and to live and to maybe get it right at the start. Unfortunately, that didn't actually happen, but rather in many ways we're recreating a lot of the inaccessibility of the real world within the digital world. And specifically by that, I mean that we presume that tech users, whether it be computers or smartphones or iPads, tablets, we assume that these users are functioning in more or less the same way, that they have similar dexterity, similar auditory abilities, similar cognitive abilities or visual acuity. And what that's meant is that we've had to get a bunch of third-party organizations building these new types of technologies in order to reintroduce disabled people into the online world or into the digital world more generally. The good news is that work has been happening for 10 to 15 years, even a little bit longer than that in some instances. And we're slowly starting to develop some really great peripheries so that people were able to get onto the computer. So we use things like screen readers, these great little programs that people can run on their computer that will basically turn any of the output from your monitor into auditory. So you're able to hear it. So people, it'll literally read the screen to you. We have things like digital braille. These are little devices that quite literally have the little bumps that are under the matte surface, and it pops up so that you're able to read the braille being translated from the computer. We also have things like adapted mouses, things that will use scroll balls instead of your typical mouse that has become kind of the more dominant use for people that maybe aren't able to click the mouse or able to physically hold onto the mouse, but can actually just use the back of their hand, for instance, to brush the ball in order to get around. And then obviously we also have things like voice commands. And that's actually a world that has exploded since the invention of the iPhone. Apple and Microsoft are in a bit of an arms race, and Google are in a bit of an arms race on now who can produce the best voice recognition software. That's something it's a consumer good, but that's actually quite literally revolutionizing computer use for people who have the inability to use keyboards or the inability to see the screen. So it's actually a really exciting time to be disabled and to be a tech user right now.
I'm glad to hear that. And I would also add Amazon into that mix as well, because
absolutely,
with this smart speaker, these like sub $30 devices that you can buy for your home that let you use your voice to interact very naturally. We are chatting with Dr. Preston. He is a professor of disability studies at King's University College at Western University. You mentioned you do teach a first and second year disability studies course, and I'm mostly intrigued with your third year course called Memes and Dreams, as I hinted at off the top. What's it all about?
So Memes and Dreams is it's actually a much bigger course than it might sound. But really, Memes and Dreams is driven by a main question, which is how does disability appear, interact, grow, and be constructed online? And so a lot of our focus ends up on social media, the ways in which we talk about disability and represent disability online, both those with and those without disabilities, but also understanding the ways that social media, other digital connective tools are actually is a great place for activism and advocacy, and the ways that disabled people around the world are using these connective software platforms as a means to push for better rights, better integration. So we try to take both sort of a macro and a micro view of how disability exists in digital spaces. We talk a lot about how disability exists outside. We talk about, whether it's in the world of medicine or occupational therapy, in physical therapy. We talk a lot about disability in those spaces. This class is really about saying, let's take a step back and actually see, what does disability look like in a world without bodies?
And a lot of it is about perception as well, and how your community is represented as well through memes or through emojis. We communicate over social media and elsewhere, which is great. Do you think, is it in a good space? Do you think it's like a healthy use of technology?
I would say that the answer to that is really going to depend on who you are referring to or who you're asking about. I would say that disability advocates have been using this technology with remarkable effectiveness over the last 2 decades to both organize and to try and push for change, both online and also in the quote unquote in the meat space.
Fascinating. We're going to continue chatting with Dr. Preston when we return on Tech It Out. This show is powered by ASUS for those in search of incredible. Visit asus.com/us/radio to check out its laptops like the VivoBooks, ZenBooks, ExpertBooks, and Chromebooks. We'll be right back with more Tech It Out on the Radio America Network.
Follow Mark Saltzman on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Listen to Tech It Out whenever you want.
We're chatting with Dr. Jeffrey Preston, a disabilities studies professor, about accessibility tools when it comes to technology. We also chatted about his course called Memes and Dreams, tied to social media and the perception of the disabled community. But I want to wrap things up with video games. You were talking earlier about special mice that are used for those that have maybe dexterity challenges. Xbox received a lot of kudos a couple of years ago with their Xbox Adaptive Controller that is also a device to help people with different physical challenges. You've been a gamer your whole life, if I'm not mistaken, and you don't see it just as fun, but you also believe there are some other attributes to gaming that you think are very positive in society.
Absolutely. Video games have actually played a really big part in my life. What started out as basically a pastime, my parents got me a Commodore 64 when I was really young and thought, well, this is something for Jeff to do during the winter when he can't really get out into the snow with his friends. So this is something for him to do to pass the time. But one of the things that I realized very early on with video games, whether it be on the Commodore, whether it was on the Nintendo or the Super Nintendo that I got later, is that when I was playing with friends on the computer, that competition was so different than what I was experiencing outside of the digital world. Outside of the digital world, I didn't have the physical strength. It was hard to be competitive when I was surrounded by people that didn't have my disability.
Right.
And I never felt really a part of the team. I was never able to play on, any of the competitive teams at my school. I just couldn't physically do it.
Not to mention your peers may have also thought, I'm going to go easy on Jeff. He's in a wheelchair, right? So in a video game, they don't know. They're none the wiser.
Well, that's it. And so once I picked up a controller with my buddies, suddenly I didn't have the same limitations, and we were now able to compete on kind of an even playing field. And it turns out that I was actually pretty good at it. And so once the internet comes out and we start playing games online, I start getting into some competitive gaming. I start playing on a team. It's the first time that I get trash talked by someone in a game when I lose, which, a lot of people are like, the trash talk on Xbox Live is so sad. And I obviously agree. But at the same time, I was thrilled the first time. I'd never had someone be mean to me because no one wants to be mean to the disabled kid. I was like, whoa, this is acceptance.
And I know you're not going in this direction, but I just want to make a quick side note point, if I may. I used to be a regular on CNN when there was this tech show that I was part of every Sunday. And I did a piece on, at that time, EverQuest, which was, as you likely remember, an online-only, massively multiplayer role-playing game. And, there was a lot of criticism at the time saying, well, people are spending too much time virtually instead of in the real world. And I flipped it on its head. And I interviewed a woman in LA who was in a wheelchair and said, in this game, I can run through fields, I can climb, I can do anything I can't do in the physical world. And this is an escape for me, and this is refreshing, and this is my, sure, it's virtual, but this is, so rewarding for me, and it really sort of changed the narrative, I think.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a part of it. I think for myself, it's meant being able to compete, to play in that sort of competitive sphere, whether that's, playing NHL on my Xbox or playing Call of Duty Warzone,
right.
In a way in which people don't see me as a disabled person, but at the same time, I can also be a disabled person and still be accepted within part of the in-group because I don't have to change anything in order for me to actually be able to compete with them. That is actually really interesting. And as a result, I've made some lifelong friends through video games. Some guys that I play NHL hockey with, we were on a team together. They came to my wedding when I got married. They were a part of the wedding. And so, I think people have that initial anxiety about people leaving the real world for the internet world. I actually think that in reality, it's really about blurring these two spaces and about the ways in which, communicating and connecting online is just yet another part of the way that we connect as people, whether it's face-to-face, on the phone, on Zoom, right now during COVID.
Yeah. As we wrap up, if there is one takeaway, what is it that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to think about the ways in which the world that we build around people can be be just as disabling or even more disabling than, a medical diagnosis itself. And so what that means is that we need to remember whenever we're approaching anything in this world, that we need to remember that there are lots of different types of people with lots of different needs, with lots of different abilities. Everyone is going to have a little bit of a different need. And so we need to think about pluralities of existence as opposed to normative existences.
And jeffpreston.ca is the best website.
Yeah, you can go to jeffpreston.ca, or you can find me on Twitter at Jeff Preston. Sort of where I'm the most active, but you can find me on pretty much all the major platforms and some variation of at Jeff Preston.
I've really enjoyed our chat. Thank you so much, Dr. Preston. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to chatting again one day.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it as well, and the rest of the program. Have a great Valentine's weekend, a healthy week ahead, and I look forward to catching up with you next weekend on another episode of Tech It Out. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.